meeting of the Sewer Authority Midco side, Monday, August 22nd, 2022. Due to the continuing state of emergency declared by the governor related to preventing the spread of COVID-19 and pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, subsection E, Sewer Authority Midco side will be holding this board meeting by Zoom webinar. Access to this meeting is available to the board and the public by the link on the top of the agenda, or you can call into 1-669-444-9171 and enter meeting ID 884-3273-3874, passcode 698448. If you wish to speak, you can unmute yourself if you're by phone. Star 9, yes, and star 9 to raise your hand, star 6 to mute yourself. So we will take a roll call now.
Director Dye.
Here.
Director Lohman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Slater Carter, I don't see her in as of now. Chair Radek.
Here.
You have a quorum, we can get started.
Okay. So we're moving on to public comment. You can raise your hand in the feature at the bottom of the screen, Zoom screen. I don't see any raised hands. Do you see any?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda, item 3. Does anyone wish to pull any of the items under item 3? No. Okay, so can we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Lohman.
Yes.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Penrose.
Aye.
Chair Radek.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. We can move on to regular business, item 4. And item 4A is authorize general manager to issue a purchase order to Integral Consulting, Inc. to develop a hydrodynamic flood model and simulate historic and potential future flood conditions at the SAM wastewater treatment plant and present model results with recommendations in a contract not to exceed $124,803.
The past couple of meetings, we have discussed several scenarios where the electricals and mechanical building 1 is likely to get flooded due to various scenarios like Pilarcitos Creek flooding, or the Quixote Ditch, or storm-related issues. And therefore, a study was done, an updated study was done a couple of months back, wherein the engineers presented a couple of options. And based on those parts, we submitted our application for hazard mitigation grant program, which is currently being evaluated. And during our initial discussions with the state a few weeks back, there were also questions raised whether we had done any hydrodynamic flood modeling for this situation, considering all these scenarios. And this came in timely when we started discussing with Integral Consulting, and this proposal has been brought to the board for authorizing to move forward, wherein Integral Consulting wishes to develop a hydrodynamic flood model and simulate various scenarios of flood conditions or how it affects the SAM wastewater treatment plant. And then they would come back and present model results with recommendations if it was approved today. So we also have the gentleman from Integral Consulting, Dr. David Revel, and Samuel McWilliams here with us, who are ready to answer any questions.
Yeah, so do the Integral representatives have a presentation to make on the proposal? Okay. I have read it thoroughly, so I'm assuming you guys did too, since you're very thorough. So feel free to ask questions. Greg, I'm going to start with the board and then follow up with the view. Is that okay? I'm going to start with Matthew Clark.
Yeah, I have several questions. Is this this cost of this study in the budget for this fiscal year we just passed recently? Is that an item in there? I looked today and I couldn't find it.
It is not a line item in the budget, but it would fall under the purview of professional services.
And is their professional services was enough put into the budget there to cover this?
Yes, I guess so. For the entire year, we've got close to $1 million. So we should be able to work around that as of now.
Okay, good. And then I don't know if this, I suppose this should go to the consultants. I read through the proposal too. It has 4 detailed phases explained, but then when you get to the schedule on page 56, it shows an additional year, all of 2024, as on call. And there's no explanation of what that means, or you know, what it is, or what it's going to cost, if anything. So that's my question. What does that mean, on call for a year after the final is accepted?
Before I get David to answer that, I'd like to say for record that Director Slater Carter has joined the meeting.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David. Would you like to answer this question?
Sure. Thank you for that. That's a good question. We left that in there because from my experience, there's a lot of, when you get these technical studies, a lot of times it takes time to work through processes and procedures, grant funding applications, permit things. You know, if you take any of the recommendations and go forward with implementation, that you may need additional technical support. Okay, can you make some figures? Can you help us with a grant proposal? So we don't really know what that is as of right now. It's sort of a open-ended question because we don't know the detail, but you know, we would be available and then we could figure out if there's something that's needed, what the cost may be for that scope of work. But I guess it's more of a placeholder for we're not going to leave you hanging at the end and saying bye-bye.
It's shown as phase 5. So I thought this was part of planned all along, but it's as needed, huh?
Yes.
It also allows us to use maybe perhaps budget that we hadn't completely used in the previous 4 phases to allow us to tack on some of those things like Dave said, you know, so we can use the full budget to help you guys with whatever you did once you completed the study.
And I will just jump in here and add that having familiarity with these sorts of studies and these contractual agreements, that this is, you know, fairly standard procedure. So, you know, there's nothing new or unusual about having room at the end if needed to do additional work, especially if you've decided you're going to take a recommendation and move forward, whether it's to get grant funding or do additional technical studies or what. Matthew, are you done there, or do you have additional questions?
No, I'm done on this one. Thank you.
Director Dye.
I have some similar questions. First, I just want to comment that I think every staff report should specify where the funding is coming from. If it's from the current budget and so forth. So I think it's helpful to know that this is going to come out of contract services. Last year, that area was over by almost $200,000. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. And then I also noticed the long time frame in this. So are we paying this entire amount up front, even though quite a bit of the, you know, the whole phase 3, which is the adaptation scenario analysis, is not going to be completed until the end of 2023. Are there any, you know, milestones where we pay for the second half of this project, or it's all up front?
It'll not be paid up front. It'll be paid as and when each phase is completed in a phased manner.
Oh, good. That's what I was hoping. All right, thank you very much. And I do really feel strongly that we need to know where the money's coming from. Thank you.
Director Slater Carter?
Thank you. Director Dye, thank you for that comment about knowing where the money's coming from. I think that's a good side note to put on just about every budget is where's that money coming from? But anyway, what are your data sources for history and for historic data and modeling? Who are you? Do you have the data? Are you going to be talking to who? And how far back are you going for this data? And are you going to give us a footnotes on where this data comes from and sources?
So I'll take a first crack, and Sam may also have some thoughts. The data really depends on what type of data we're talking about. We have very good topographic data from the County of San Mateo. We just finished the South Coast sea level rise assessment, so we have the latest topographic data that was designed for watershed hydraulic modeling. Stream flow data comes from the USGS on Pilarcitos Creek, farther closer to the quarry. There's waves and tide buoy that comes from NOAA. One of the challenges is the sort of historic flood extents that have occurred at SAM. And we only have a few storm events that have documented flooding, and we don't have precise dates. So as we go to calibrate any model, we want to have something to calibrate with. So part of the reason for the duration of this study is that we're going to be putting out some sensors in Pilarcitos Lagoon so that we understand what the lagoon water levels are seasonally, how high do they get before they breach. So there'll be a wide variety of data sets that we collect. Some of them have quite long time records, and some are a picture of, a flooded truck from circa 1985 that we also need to use to kind of calibrate what's gotten wet in the past. Sam, did you have any other thoughts?
No, I would just say that we anticipate working closely with the folks at SAM to make sure that we're incorporating a lot of that anecdotal evidence, because I think we're going to have to rely on some of that as well in order to understand how the model is behaving and is that representing the reality that exists. But like Dave said, we'll be using a lot of publicly available data sets. So specifically, the USGS has flow data, and I'd have to go back to look at how long the record goes. But that flow gauge at Pilarcitos Creek goes back a sufficient amount of time, I think, to be able to understand what those potential flooding scenarios might look like.
If I could add, you may want to talk to the Resource Conservation District.
Sure, we worked very closely with Kellex and her team on the South San Mateo County.
And Balance Hydrologics has been monitoring the streams, including the creeks in San Mateo County for decades.
Great, okay.
So you can get a lot of historic data.
I know Barry and Sean, and yes, great. No,
and so,
that's a good tip. Thank you.
Mark and Balance Hydrologics maintain the water gauge, several water gauges on the coast, one on Montero Mountain for Montero Water and Sanitary District. And I'm trying to think, I think they have one in Half Moon Bay too. It's my recollection, but you might want to check and talk to them. Whereas Barbara's worried about how you get paid, I'm worried about what your data sets are and how accurate they are.
I'm worried about both.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Greg?
I apologize if I've missed prior meetings where some of this may have been covered, but I'm concerned about the scope of the study. The storm event that worries me the most was the one on December 13th and 14th, where the storm exceeded the maximum theoretical capacity of the plant, and only with timely intervention and that portable pump was the electrical building saved. Now, I don't know whether that counts as a Pilarcitos Creek event. It doesn't seem like it was. You may be aware that John Dowdy had one of his engineers run an analysis that showed, if I recall correctly, Half Moon Bay couldn't be responsible for more than 7.5 million gallons per day. That's an hourly rate, which left a gap between the flows, which were documented from the north, and the total flow at the plant of around 5 million gallons a day. And that threatened the electrical building. So, you know, one issue is what are we doing about the electrical building in the short run and the long run? But the other issue is, does this study evaluate, and I think it would be quite valuable to try and find out where those excess flows were coming from, the 5 million gallons a day peak rate that almost flooded the electrical building. So my first question is, does this scope study that? And then my second question is this just around the plant, or is this cover the whole system? Because on the day of that storm, there was an overflow up in Montara. And I am aware that there are microclimate issues and the rainfall can be different, you know, in one area and a few miles away from another. But as Catherine said, and I was talking to Clemens about this the other day, he has a data set that goes back a while on the rainfall, and that might or might not be interesting locally. So you should get a hold of Clemens Heldemeyer. So my question about the scope, to repeat it, does this include trying to figure out what happened on December 14th and 15th and where that flooding came from? And does it include any other parts of the SAM network, like upstream in the IPS or downstream in Half Moon Bay somewhere?
So you froze a little bit on my computer in the middle of it, but I got the gist of your questions. I think the answer is sort of. Part of what we'd be doing is looking for historic events. I know John, I've known John for a long time. And so certainly for historic events that we to calibrate the model, we weren't, you know, and we have to consider sort of, we're going to consider the Kehoe water course or ditch, whichever way you prefer to talk about that. So we have all the sources of water coming into the system and then how it's affected by the lagoon hydrodynamics and the wave and sea level rise in our scenario planning. So there's not necessarily a forensic component of like, why did that event cause problems? But we would certainly look for an event like that to be able to calibrate the model and be able to rep sort of the flows that.
You also froze for me, but just off the top of my head, I didn't think this had anything to do with the lagoon. Kishan can speak to that.
Kishan, do you want to add to the response?
Yes, I'd like to add to Greg's questions that yes, we are looking at short-term measures to prevent the electrical building from flooding. We have looked at several scenarios and we're working out costs. We'll bring that back to the board at a later date once we are ready with it. Now, this proposal is only for a long-term thing. And of course, the December 13th event will be given as whatever data we've collected, we'll pass it on to Integral Consulting if the job gets awarded to them so that they can use that. Plus, as you're aware, we have a lot of data in the past going all the way back to 2017 or 2018, 2016, 2017. We can pass on all that information to Integral Consulting so that they can use that in their model.
I apologize. I froze, I think, through half of that, but I was just talking to myself.
It was sporadic. I think we got most of what you
Okay. Yeah.
I might add that the first step in that first phase is really developing that conceptual site model. So identifying all of those inputs and making sure that we have those covered. So things like you're talking about with rainfall of these other systems, you know, we'll certainly take that into consideration. Speaking about the lagoon, our working understanding is that the lagoon is regulated by a coastal berm and it allows, depending on if that is closed or open, allows water to flow through or is blocked and the water levels in the lagoon will change. And that can have an effect on localized flooding. So that's why the lagoon is being considered. The range of the model will extend to a sufficient distance north and south and around the system. So it's not just the SAM site itself, but it is the surrounding area extending out to the coast as well.
Catherine.
Thank you. I have another question. You talked about having topo models. I'm assuming those are for natural runoff. What do you know, or how are you going to look at the effects of urban runoff into the creeks? Those can change it significantly, particularly when the urban runoff is running into, for instance, a sewer access point. I use that instead of manhole, but it seems to work because the Half Moon Bay only has some rain management facilities, as I recall. In other places, it doesn't. So how are you going to be calculating that? Particularly in a storm like Greg just mentioned, the one in December. We also had a real fun one in December of 1982 too. So
probably. That was probably one of the storms of record across the state.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are going to be looking up sort of watershed. So we'll be looking at the Kehoe contributions, and we'll be looking at Pilarcito's contributions below the gauge to make any adjustments that we feel are necessary to capture sort of the inputs into the system. In terms of specific, pipe sources and water coming in. So we are looking at sort of surface water and groundwater dynamics with the lagoon. The flow into the sanitary district itself is sort of a different issue than what we're going to be addressing. We're looking at the flood levels that could affect this facility, not if there is infiltration into the pipe system and the sewer network that overflows the system.
Right, but that's part of my question, because there are streets that do run into the Kehoe area, for instance, and there are also streets that run into Pilarcito's Creek.
So anything downstream of a gauge, or if we're looking at Kehoe and we're scaling it by the watershed scale, because there's not currently a gauge on that system, there are sort of sensitivity analysis looking at impervious surfaces and how that may exacerbate flooding and flow rates within that system. And so that's part of why identifying a few of the historic flood events and using some of those parameters about impervious surface nature or flow in different sort of sub watersheds is really important to making sure that we're capturing existing conditions properly.
Well, it certainly will be interesting to read it, and I'm glad you will be available in the year following so that we can come back with more questions and observations.
Well, hopefully we'll answer most of the questions during the contract duration, and then we can help you solve the problem afterwards.
Well, this is this board has a great many very learned questions, and
great.
So it's between the 6 board members, there's always questions the consultants didn't expect.
That'll make it more fun.
Right, Matthew?
That's what we tried for.
Kishan, I see.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I see Greg has raised his hand, so waiting for.
All right, Greg.
Well, I heard his answer, and it sounds like they might not address the issue of what happened at the plant if it's from I&I. So can we at least get a statement as to whether or not the flows came from other than the pipe system, the collection system, which would then leave us to have to find the sewer pipes. So if we can't, you know, I don't expect them to go hunting through every pipe in the collection system to find a source of the INI. But can we at least get a statement as to whether it was INI or something else that, you know, maybe the pipes weren't connected or something? I don't know.
I'm
We've
not.
got to be able to rule things out.
I'm not sure these are the right guys to take that on. That's more like a hydraulic study of the system. This is, you know, the reason we got here was because it was out of the recognition that the electrical system is at risk because of its location. And, you know, we charged some consultants to evaluate options for moving the electrical system. And then it was decided that, well, maybe we need to understand more, you know, the risks associated with, you know, flooding from storm events and inlet issues and getting a handle on what we might be facing with sea level rise. So the how was the system performing? It was a risk assessment around the need to deal with the electrical system. And people did not want to spend money on moving the electrical system without understanding, you know, the bigger picture around the plant. So that's why we're looking at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's why we're not looking at the entire, you know, treatment plant plus the IPS. So that's how we got here, and that's how, you know, Kishan, you know, developed the request for qualifications.
Deborah, I think that was well said, and I would say that my understanding of this is for the scope of study about the external threats that could flow into SAM. For instance, we have a big berm except at the driveway. And if the creek overflowed above the driveway and flowed in, what would happen? And so I don't see it as a SAM system report. I think we've got a lot of data on that. And I believe if we talk to our staff, we'd get a whole lot of really good information on that and decision-making points. But this one is for the flows surrounding the plant, like we're a little island.
Right, and you know, the concern was the location of the plant, right? We're bordered on one side with the creek and one side with the, you know, the Kehoe Channel, and plus we have these intense pulses of precipitation. But the goal is, you know, initially, while we make potentially longer term decisions about, do we need to move the plant? Do we want to, you know, are we going to have to get rid of the outfall because of, you know, legislative mandates? So it's the impetus was, how do we protect the plant while longer term thinking, you know, evolves? Like, it didn't make much sense to evaluate the potential for distributed package plants, you know, with a justification for, you know, the taxpayers about the status of the system and the threats to the system, and what the feasibility is for the status quo kind of a thing. So hence, this is the scope of work that we asked for. And I'll just add that, you know, the city council had a little workshop on on a study that Integral performed for the city, looking at erosion issues around the golf courses and the Ritz. And you can find that study, you know, it's like, you know, like 22, you know, megabytes. So you might want to just go to the city's website and look at the packet for the meeting. It's item B, and you can see, you know, that study. And there's a lot of references there about, you know, the data used for that study. If you want to increase your, you know, your level of confidence in the, you know, the consultant, you know, there's a handful of great coastal engineers and geomorphologists in the state of California, and they're looking at probably one of the top 5. So it doesn't get much better than that. So that's kind of the bigger picture of why we're here tonight.
Well, if everyone's done talking, I'd like to make a motion, but I'll let everyone talk first.
Anybody else? Deborah.
Yeah, I just want to say that I was very impressed with the study that Integral did for our city for the coastal erosion. And I would recommend that people take a look at that to see the broad scope of information that they were able to gather to give us the many different factors which were combining to cause the erosion problem. It'll help us a lot in looking at the study that they do for us here. And I also wanted to say that I'm excited that we're getting started on this. I think it's high time, and good on us.
Thank you, Deborah. I do have one remaining question. I just want to understand more the investigation of the issue of the groundwater. As you know, 2 or 3 years ago, it was all over the Chronicle, like groundwater is going to rise first and faster than sea level rise impacts. And I know that from the experience of Foster City, raising their levy, that it turns out, they're going to have issues first with the rising groundwater there. So I just want to understand and get that, out in the open about how your investigation of groundwater will play into this.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you both for the kind words. I know my team put a lot into the coastal erosion work, and we'd love to keep working with your team, with the city and Sam here. The groundwater question, we have a lot of surface water, groundwater, hydrologic modelers at Integral. This is really more of a question of groundwater elevation caused by seasonal lagoon dynamics. And so one of the first tasks we're going to do is put a gauge out there to really understand what those groundwater levels are like, what the water surface elevations are like. I've been doing a lot of lagoon work up and down the California coast. I'm in the middle of a construction project on the San Lorenzo River in Santa Cruz, where part of my sea level rise study looking at areas that got wet, that were hydraulically disconnected, mapped almost exactly to the groundwater levels found in the lagoon during sustained closure events. So there really is a huge groundwater contribution in these coastal lagoon systems, and the available modeling USGS has some, does not consider sort of the dynamic seasonality of the bar-built estuaries that we have on the Central Coast. And so this, looking at how the lagoon mouth and water levels are functioning, how long they're staying closed, will allow us to understand how that groundwater sort of percolates and rises in different places. And as obviously as sea level rises, that's also going to be coming longer and fast, longer duration and higher elevations. And so that's part of this compound flood model where we're looking at lagoon dynamics affecting the flows, and then storm waves and wave dynamics also affecting the flows, then looking at the risk at the site.
Thank you, Dave. And Michelle Dragoni has posted on chat, some links that might be of interest relating to the study. Delia.
That's in line with Director Dye's concerns about where the money is coming from. Generally, I expect that when the professional services budget is being calculated, that you're taking expected or known expenses that you have from year to year. And if this model, the cost of it was not included in those numbers, then I'm concerned that that line item is going to be exceeded. It was last year by a considerable amount. And those overages are eating away into other projects like infrastructure projects. So I'm thinking that it should be more appropriate to be a budget amendment than just an approval, because you are technically spending 120 some odd $1,000 more than expected when the budget was, calculated. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Kishan and/or George, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, at the end of this fiscal year, it will probably be just phase 1 and phase 2, which will be about $70,000. And we can see how the next few months go on. And then if required, we can go for a mid-year budget adjustment. I don't think we should go for a mid-year budget adjustment right now, because last year there was an overage because of hiring several consultants we did due to the plant upset, and a lot of other unforeseen things came up. And that's why we exceeded it. So I don't foresee anything like that as of now, but nevertheless, if required, we can always go for a mid-year budget adjustment.
And I do want to thank Director Dye, for raising that question. It's something that's been on our minds, and we want to, keep it up there. So we're doing our due diligence. So thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I do think this is a good project, a really smart thing to be doing. And
Thank you. Jeremy?
Looking forward to it, hearing the results.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ruddock. I was just going to point out the JPA agreement when in response to the issue raised by Ms. Komito. Hopefully I'm saying your last name correctly.
Close.
Oh, good. Okay, good start. Okay. On page 15 of the JPA agreement, there's a provision involving expenditures for the approved budgets, and notes all expenditures within the designations and limitations of approved general project budgets shall be made on the authorization of a majority of the directors present at the meeting during which budget expenditures are approved. No expenditures in excess of those budgeted shall be made without the unanimous consent and approval of all the directors representing the member agencies affected by the budget under consideration. So
Thank you, Jeremy. So do we have a motion to,
Yes, I would like for us to vote on the motion to authorize the general manager to issue a purchase order to Integral Consulting, Inc. to develop a hydrodynamic flood model and simulate historic and potential future flood conditions at the Sam wastewater treatment plant, and present model results and results with recommendations in a contract not to exceed $124,803. And I am really impressed with the getting down to $3.
Second.
all right, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, David and Samuel, for being present at the meeting and answering all the questions.
Thank you
Well,
very
we're going to
much.
be excited to follow your work. So
I appreciate all the great questions and looking forward to picking your brains to make sure we get it right. So talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
thanks again.
Goodbye.
Okay, item 4B is authorized general manager to issue a purchase order to Generac Industrial Power for the supply of a trailer mounted generator in the amount of $108,733.
Jeremy, could you please lower your hands? Okay, this is regarding the trailer mounted generator. As you're aware, there have been several occasions in the past wherein we had to shut off the PG&E power or lose PG&E power. Like, for example, if you were to do maintenance of the bus duct, or if you were to replace some of the cables, then we have to shut off the PG&E power completely. And on such occasions, we normally rent out a generator. And renting out a generator is not only expensive, it costs almost $20,000 because we need to keep it for at least a minimum of 4 to 5 days, mobilizing and then connection, disconnection, plus having it during the entire time. Plus, it's also availability at such times. Sometimes it becomes very critical to even get hold of a portable generator. We might have had to push a couple of events because of non-availability of generator. And therefore, we decided to add it in the current fiscal year budget at the beginning of the, at the beginning of the time when we were drafting the budget. And therefore, we reached out to 3 suppliers for a quotation for the generator, and we found that generic industrial power has got the lowest lead time as well as the lowest price. And therefore, this is being brought to the board for approval for SAM to go ahead and purchase the portable generator. Staff is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kishan. Any for staff? Are there any members of the public with hands raised? Barbara, do you, oh, yes, Matthew, you go first.
Will this be Sam's first and only mobile generator? Or is there an existing smaller one?
No, this is the first one.
Yeah, we definitely should have it.
Director Dye?
I just wanted to say, I think this is a prudent thing to do. Clearly, there are issues with PG&E, and having electrical power available is critically important.
Agreed. Anybody else? Is there a motion?
Deborah, I'll let you make the motion.
You're muted. You're muted, Deborah.
I move that we authorize the general manager to issue a purchase order to Generac Industrial Power for the supply of a generator.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4C, declare identified equipment as unsafe and authorize the general manager to dispose as appropriate.
Yep, this is regarding proper disposal of unsafe equipment which have been identified at the SAM plant, as well as dispose of one of the equipment, which is the trash pump, which has been not in service and not operational for quite some time. As you see in the staff report has got pictures of the flusher truck, and these are not safe to operate, neither is it safe to even dispose it off or sell it off. Therefore, we'd like to salvage it completely. And we also have the picture of the trash pump, which was bought in 2004, which has not run for a few years because it's more expensive to get it repaired and keep it functional. Plus, it does not fulfill the requirements of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District requirements. And therefore, this has been brought to the board to declare these assets as surplus and authorize the general manager to dispose them of as appropriate. Staff is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kishan. Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Lohman, Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passed.
Okay, so item 5, general manager's report.
Yep, the detailed report is attached in the board packets. Staff is here to answer any questions.
Any questions? I don't see any hands raised either from the
No.
public.
Director Clark has raised his hand.
Yeah, Director Clark.
I was just wondering why on, what's this, page 3 of the staff report, I think it is, that Kelly Barkley is noted as a new hire. Hasn't she been on staff for, I don't know, a while now?
Director Clark, she was a temporary staff person until June 30th, and as of July 1, because of this new budget for this new fiscal year, she's been appointed as an accounting technician, and she's on the regular payroll.
I see. Thank you.
Anybody else? Do we have an attorney's report this evening?
Yes, just a brief one, Madam Chair. So I don't know if any of you were able to had a chance to review it, but the governor was busy last week and released the water supply strategy for out to 2040. Now, most of this deals with water supply, but there is a significant component that certainly affects SAM and potentially creates some opportunities. So I guess the most important point for SAM is that the governor has a goal of increasing, and the genesis for this is the loss of other sources of supply associated with climate change, right? Changes in the hydrologic cycle, less snowpack, less reliable other sources of supply that the state's historically relied on. So the governor put out a strategy for, okay, what are our strategies to potentially make up for that loss? So one of the key components, and there's a number of them, there's stormwater capture, there's brackish desal, but one of the big ones is recycled water. And recycled water, there's a goal to make up an additional 1.8 million acre feet by 2040, which is a lot. And of that, so in furtherance of being able to achieve that goal, and there's an interim goal in 2030 as well, approximately half that, the governor, there's a discussion of potentially putting up to 3.2 billion in financing for water recycling projects. The state is, by 2030, they're estimating an additional 27 billion. So there's funds potentially available. The state board by 2024 is supposed to work with local water and sanitation agencies, such as SAM, to identify recycled water projects that hold the potential to be operational by 2030 and no later than 2040. And then there's also additional criteria and requiring the state water board to fast track direct potable recharge and other projects that are currently in the pipeline. So anyway, I think that, it probably requires or should counsel that SAM take a close look at this, because there could be some funds and opportunities in the not too distant future associated with the governor's plan.
Yeah, I think that SAM would want to potentially, partner with the water district as applicants on some of these grants, right? It's going to take two to tango here. It's going to take,
that seems very prudent.
The water distributor, which also are, eligible applicants for recycled water funding, both on the state and federal level. And CCWD has jumped on it. They want to be the lead, and there's some good reasons for them to do that. But SAM must be a partner, in the member agencies. So, I'm guessing that CCWD will be knocking on SAM's door shortly. But, I think we want to be prepared to, partner to, maximize funds, identify locations. And as you know, CCWD has sort of been promoting over the last 5 or 6 years, potable reuse. So going beyond just a pilot project for the golf course, which had issues related to funding, with, various caps placed on contributions and things like that, which make it, harder to do. So, we have to kind of look at, I think, what's the right scope here, the scope that, taxpayers and users be willing to, help pay for, and identify, all the various infrastructure pieces and locations. So, Barbara.
Well, I'm interested in, it seemed as if we decided that we were going to start being active on recycled water a couple of years ago. And I'd like, I know that there's not a whole lot of extra bandwidth to deal with that right now, but I still think that I'd be happy to be part of a working group or be involved in looking into or somehow seeing what we could do to move the recycled water project along. And then second, I wanted to say to Jeremy, I don't know if you saw the articles that scientists, I think it's Stanford, have discovered a way to destroy PFAS, which is, you were warning us about them in our water. It'll be a long time before they're practical, but it's interesting that they are working on ways to eliminate them since they're a problem in water systems and other places. I'm sure it was an early report, but still, it's good. It's a good thing to have happen.
Yeah, I did see that. I'll be interested to see if they're able to prove it out, and the kind of tests they would need to be able to do to verify the effectiveness of the technology. But if that's true, I mean, PFAS is huge. I mean, it affects water agencies, wastewater agencies, everybody. And to the extent they're able to cost effectively remove it, that's going to be a big deal.
Cleaning up our water creates more usable water, right? So it's not just a matter of net supply. It's like cleaning what we have and cleaning the resources we have so that it's usable by humans. But clean water, cleaning our water is super, important. And, nature is really good at it too, creating, wetlands and groundwater recharge and, there's all kinds of approaches now, to accomplish this. They require land, they require space in addition to technology and new policies, but it's the future. We're going to have to clean every drop of water that, we have access to make it usable. So.
Yep. That's it for my report.
Okay. Do we have director's reports? Seeing none, do we have topics for future board consideration?
Yes.
Okay, Catherine?
We had a vote on doing, help me with the name of this, Keishan, the training program for SAM that included training new staff on the environmental issues and aspects of the SAM plan, as well as the technological training, and it was defeated. We still have large staff turnover coming, and we still need to have, I believe, a more transparent and visible training program for the public to be able to take comfort in the fact that we're doing this. The MWSD board discussed it briefly, and we would like to see further work done on putting a program together, not the one that we voted against, but we need to keep moving forward on our training and new generation of employees and how we're going to be protecting the environment of the coast through the sewer system. And so I would like to have that as a future agenda item, as would my fellow board members from MWSD. So thank you.
Matthew?
There were two items shown on this table that were scheduled for the August 8th this year, the meeting that was canceled. Public records policy and the minutes policy. Will those reappear soon?
Yes, I'm hopeful of bringing it in the first meeting in September. This has already been discussed in the board operations committee, and we need to just fine tune it and bring it to the board, and hopefully bring it in the first meeting in September.
Yeah, there were a couple minor revisions that need to be done after the committee meetings, but
Yep.
should be pretty easy to get to you.
I just want to make a quick director's report. So you probably have read or heard that our new city manager is Matthew Chittister, who was our assistant city manager. He started Friday at 5:01. Bob's last day was Friday at 5 o'clock. So, I think people are feeling, pretty excited about that. He's a hometown boy and loves the coast. And, I think will be really good for Half Moon Bay on the coast side. And then John Dowdy is going to assume the assistant manager responsibilities, at least in the interim. And Maz Bozarginia is going to be moving into the public works director position. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of Maz and probably, Matt, at least initially, so he can get up to speed on stuff. So that's the new organization in Half Moon Bay, and I hope you'll welcome our new guys. Okay, do we have any closed session items?
Yes, we do, Chair.
Yeah. And just as a clarification, I saw Michelle Dragony's comment about Link Please. So if she's wondering about the state supply strategy, I have put it in the chat.
Great.
Yeah. So yeah, we do have one closed session that we need to discuss. So we should go into closed session this time for no further actions.
Also, Jeremy, could you send that link, not just in the chat, but could you send it to the board members as well?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to be adjourning the closed session now. So we'll see some of you later.
Yeah, we'll wait for the rest of the people to leave, those who are not required.